Hello, my name is Randy Reed. I'm the editor and publisher of the Edison Report, which is delighted to co-sponsor the National Lighting Bureau's annual Lighting Forum. We're here at the studios of the forum's other co-sponsor, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, where I am moderating 6 panel discussions. This panel is titled, "It's Not Your Father's Lighting Maintenance." Our panelists are Norma Frank of Colorado Lighting, Terry Coleman with the Electrical Training Alliance, and Jim Yorgi with Lutron. Welcome. Norma, first question for you. In lighting maintenance, do we still see fluorescent systems that are being maintained?
Randy, we still do see a lot of fluorescent systems that are being maintained. The aspect of retrofitting the old systems has happened a lot. So we see a lot of T8 and a lot of T5 applications, and they're going to be a little bit harder to make the case of retrofitting to an LED. Now, as LED prices have come down, that is changing, and we are seeing some people switch over. But from the energy efficiency standpoint, it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Are there any issues with components, with getting ballast and lamps for these fluorescent systems?
Not at this time, although I do believe as manufacturing is changing, because the manufacturers aren't focusing on fluorescent technology, or as they call it, their core technology, the day will come where I think it gets to be more complicated in getting that supply.
Jim?
Yeah, I think it's something we're seeing is the availability of all the same like T8 lamps is shrinking, and the cost is going up. So the cost of certainly T12s went up, but also T8s now too. Although we do, even on some specified projects, we do once in a while see fluorescent being used, although on the most part a new project is typically LED.
Right.
But if you're putting in fluorescent today, you really should be thinking about the longer term maintenances. Will they be around?
And that issue of the price increase, I think, also will help sway the LED retrofit.
Sure.
In the lighting maintenance arena, when you're replacing tubes, do you have a preference whether type A, type B?
I'm not crazy about type B, but I'm kind of from the old school.
And type B is where you remove the ballast and you're direct.
You're direct. So to me, kind of is a safety issue, but seems to be more and more widely accepted in the industry.
So speaking of safety, Terry, a little bit about the employees in the industry, and I understand there's a shortage of trained technical employees. What's the reason for that, and what's the solution?
I think there's a lot of reasons that we're trying to identify. It's I think, a generational issue. I think there's some issues that deal with the perhaps wages and benefits. A lot of people are not wanting to get into the trades. Craft work isn't, I think, appreciated as much as it has been in the past. And under the generational aspects, I think students and kids in high school, that sort of thing, have been sort of steered away, more college orientation, instead of actually looking at the building trades as an option to work. And college isn't the answer to all work. You know, about
Right.
2/3 of jobs don't require a 4-year degree. So we're trying to get the message out that says, look, there are some options here besides college.
But what does the Alliance, what is your goal with the Alliance?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is to attract more people. We're doing it on a couple of fronts. One, trying to access people that are leaving the military, so
Okay.
that we can do things like direct entry into apprenticeship programs for those that have similar MOSs that are under electrical or telecommunications, or looking at interviewing or pre-apprenticeship programs for those that that are coming out of the military that don't have a similar MOS. We're always also looking at helping guidance counselors, people understand that this is good work. The benefits are, you know, you don't have to pay a tuition. You know,
Right.
you actually paid to learn on the job. So, you know, no matter how hard we try, though, that message just seems to still be a best kept secret. It's it's a tough message.
So, Jim?
Well, and we're involved in helping train in some of the apprentice programs, and what I see, which is kind of good, is you see some of the older electricians wanting to learn the newer technologies that we need to teach with our kinds of products, but there are a lot of young ones that, I mean, they pick up on the whole programming thing real quickly, you know, which is great, and that's what's going to be needed because, you know, in terms of maintaining certainly a control system today, it's about, you know, programming and,
Okay.
and it's,
So we see controls in more buildings today. How does that affect lighting maintenance companies?
well, I think we see it both from the maintenance side, from the lighting maintenance companies, but also internally with facilities maintenance people. They need a new skill set that goes beyond what they do today. It's not just replacing a bulb or ballast. It's understanding the controls, occupant sensors, daylight sensors, and how they operate and how they need to be programmed. And certainly we see buildings where the building isn't hiring those kinds of facilities people, and so they struggle with having a good operating lighting system. It's not just switches on the wall anymore.
With all these differences that are occurring in lighting technologies and controls, we are charged with maintaining, you know, and updating curriculum and content, and reaching out to training partners that help us achieve that goal, like Lutron, for example, that comes and participates. We find that journeymen who've left the apprenticeship program don't have the same skill sets as those that are currently leaving the apprenticeship program. Because we add to the apprenticeship programs the skill and knowledge they need. However, as things change, then they have to come back for training. So it's part of our charge to develop that and get it deployed, and then we rely heavily on people outside, you know, of the Electrical Training Alliance to help us know what those things are. And manufacturers, you know, are more or less on the cutting edge, and they can help us tremendously in getting that message out.
So Norma, we talk about L70, you know, an end-of-life metric for fixtures. How do lighting maintenance companies calculate end of life?
You know, we look at L70 as kind of a standard, right? It's an average, and so it depends very much so on the manufacturer and how they're rating everything. And so we partner with the manufacturers a lot when we're looking at end-of-life scenarios. But when you look at maintenance on a whole, that is a kind of a whole different story when it comes to end of life. It depends on the customers, what they're looking for. You know, are they looking for life ratings? Are they looking for light ratings? Are they looking for a color rating? We're seeing our customers have different demands for different types of things that they're actually wanting to look for. You throw in the mix of old maintenance, which was very much about standard end of life. You knew when that product should be relamped, and it made it a much easier situation. You knew when the product was going to be relamped, it was relamped. The fixtures were cleaned at that time. Now with LED, all of that kind of basic stuff goes off the charts.
With lighting maintenance contractors, if they're going to recommend an upgrade, they've got the maintenance contract, they've been maintaining the fluorescent lamps and ballast for 10 years, and now you come in and you're doing a recommended upgrade. Typically, would you recommend putting in complete new fixtures or truly retrofitting the existing fixtures? Do you have a preference?
That it's so dependent on the situation. You know, it's so solution driven for the customer. In some cases, it makes a lot of sense just to be able to do a retrofit. In other cases, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And the rebates are as such that sometimes the rebate really helps spur the answer too. Some of the rebates are tremendous, and it makes more sense to put a new fixture in.
typically the rebates would be higher for a new fixture
Could
than
be.
for a retrofit.
Yeah, of course, they vary all the time, and I'm sure they vary across the whole United States, but yeah, a good.
But here's a market question for you. So it's a company that you've been doing business with for 10 years. You more or less kind of own the client. If you do a retrofit, you're pretty well locked in. But if they're putting in new fixtures, don't you run the risk of them going out for bid and now you're competing against the OEMs?
Well, you know, it's always being about competitive. So we still would go the way of what's best for the customer.
Okay.
It has to be what's best for the customer.
And
so,
in many cases, it is really a new fixture.
in many cases.
I've seen some of the retrofits with LEDs.
Yes, you have to be very careful.
And I just don't think the quality is there on the ones that I've seen.
Nope, you have to be very, very careful.
Please.
Yeah, one of the things with when you're doing retrofits to LEDs, because we're lowering the wattage as well, is that's the time to do controls. It should be included at that point of retrofit. Because if you think, well, I'll come back later and do controls, the return on investment at that stage isn't as great, because you're really getting your big hit on savings by going to LED. And today, the cost of fixtures that are controllable continues to come down.
Right.
And so when doing those retrofits, it's getting the controls in at that point.
Yes.
And I know many of the LED fixtures will come with a dimming driver, whether you want it or not.
That's right.
They're
Yeah.
coming with that. And we are offering that more and more to our customers, educating them on it. So many of the times, and I've talked to Jim about this a lot, there's a lot of old control systems out there that don't work. They've been installed, and then the expert, whoever the expert was in the company, is gone, and so they just turn them off. And so it is an opportune time to have a lot of conversation about.
And the controls still work, there's just no one that knows how to use them?
Nobody's used them for years. And maybe that system is probably an outdated system.
Right, and whether it's an older system, but even today we see that happening where a newer system will be installed into a building and they won't have the personnel able to maintain it. So it quickly gets not used correctly. So whether it's an older, out-of-date system or sometimes
Yeah.
even a new system. So it's really having the right maintenance people able to cope with and understand the system, whether it's old or new.
And this is where you guys come in on training people.
Yeah, we attempt, we're sort of up against it a little bit in that, you know, our electrical contractors will get a job, and then they get off the job. And a lot of times they don't pursue these maintenance type contracts, which we try to encourage them to do, because that can be a steady source of income that they wouldn't have otherwise. What we try to do is channel a basic understanding of controls and control systems. We may get the job of installing the controls, and we may or may not get the job of commissioning the controls. And then a lot of times that belongs to the owner, and the owner wants somebody to come in and commission. And like Jim had just expressed, the problem is that person goes away. Now nobody knows how to operate the system. Our electrical contractors were not pulled in to do the commissioning, and therefore don't understand the system themselves. So there's a learning curve that they have to overcome. The other piece of that is, what does the customer want, or what does the customer really understand about their own control system?
Right.
Does it do what they want, or do they even understand what it is that they want? And that we're trying to get our folks to understand how to ask those questions, and so that they can help the customer decide. If the customer has a great knowledge of what they want, that makes it easier on us. If we have to flush it out, it's a little tougher.
Jim?
Yeah, and we certainly see that problem today. And so one of the things we do is we're adding into the original contracts that the contractor will purchase things like what we call optimization visits, where we literally go back into the facility and work with the end users at optimizing how the system works, and provide the training to their maintenance people at that point. And also things like what we call a welcome sort of visit, where excuse me, The contractor has been working with the system, but once the system is turned over to the end user, there's some time lag there, so that the people actually in the facility haven't been exposed to how the system's been working, and it's trying to pull those two pieces together, the contractor and us and the end user, so that everybody knows what they've got.
But you would agree that the systems are simpler, they're more intuitive these days, and then these young people that are controlling their lights at their home with their smartphone understand this a little bit better.
That's right.
Right.
That is, it's a generational thing where as the newer generation, like I was saying, when we do training at the locals, the young guys just pick up the phone, they can right away program, systems. So
Right.
that's certainly going to help us longer term.
Closing comments?
I just would want to emphasize again that maintenance is a critical factor of a lighting system. I mean, it's designed and it's installed, but it needs to be maintained. That design piece of it that wants to be ongoing and be proper, it doesn't happen if you don't have somebody going in and checking on it every 6 months,
Right.
every year. And now beyond that, should we be checking on the lumen output? Should we be checking on the color? Should we be able to offer our customers all of that information? I think it's almost a necessary part of this new era.
Right. Terry?
Well, looking at it, I think that we have some work to do as far as getting people in. We talked about that. I think you hit on the point where younger people are easier to adapt to new technology. And I see that as a place where we can recruit and bring people in to see, here's some of the cool things we get to do with your cell phone now, your iPad, and perform for the customer, either startup, commissioning, or maintaining lighting systems and controls. Controls is a big piece. So I think that makes it a little bit more exciting for those younger people to come into the trade.
Sure.
Yeah, maintenance is critical for lighting systems, and one of the things as we're seeing the advent of the LED, understanding when the lamps have to be replaced and that sort of thing is more difficult. Although with a more sophisticated system, we can track lamp hours and be able to send emails that say, okay,
Right.
you're at end of life. But most buildings don't have those sophisticated systems, so it's up to the maintenance company that's providing maintenance to be able to convince the client that even though your lights are still on, they need to be replaced because they're at their end of life. And so these are things that we're going to start wrestling with as LEDs have just come into play in the last 5 years or whatever. So we're only now starting to approach really end of life. And it'll be an interesting time as we start seeing this happening, and it's again I think up to the maintenance companies to be able to convince their customers that it's time now to replace those fixtures. And
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's tough.
I kind of chuckle because when I first got in the lighting industry, we had a lot of mercury vapor, and those never quit.
Right. Right.
And convincing the customer that they were not getting any light output out of them was, one of our big selling techniques back then. And then I just chuckle now because I think, oh my gosh, we're going to be going through that same
Yeah.
period again. But educating the customer, and that is on all of us to be able to understand the technology is going to be really critical and important.
Okay. Guys, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Andy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.